If everything we're going to say is going to be offensive, and if we say nothing, we're stonewalling, then the best thing we got after that is to treat you like we treat ourselves.
And I can respect that as long as I can then come to you and say, hey, I felt like everything that you said to me was offensive. Hey y'all, it's your girl Nadia.
And it's me, Coach T.
And we are two average people.
Yes, we are.
So last time we talked about blocks in communication. And we read an article and we were kind of just discussing it. We talked about different ways that, you can cut off communication or make your partner feel like, they can't express themselves or be heard. And so we wanted to continue the conversation today.
Right.
If you haven't checked out the last podcast, please look at it. We definitely kind of discussed this.
It's right there. You can find it. It's right there.
But please check it out because, we want to know your thoughts about it as well. This is more of a discussion for us. To kind of see, what our thoughts are. Okay, so I'm just going to recap the ones that we talked about really quick and give a quick example. So the first one that we talked about was name calling.
Yep.
This is when the listener places a label on the person talking. Communication is blocked. Example, if we take the headache like we did in our last, and as they did in the article, I think you're being a bit dramatic. Diverting. The listener flips the conversation to another topic or more often another subject. Example, I have a headache too, actually. Fixing.
Gotcha.
When the listener attempts to fix the problem, it takes away from the speaker's need to feel seen and heard. It becomes about the listener's anxiety rather than the speaker's experience. Example, well, did you take ibuprofen? Judging. A distinct judgment call on the other person. Example, you don't drink enough water. This is all related to the example of the headache. Preaching. When the listener becomes the expert in the speaker's topic, it takes away from the speaker's need to express and feel heard. You don't look after yourself. Get more sleep. So those are the ones that we had talked about before. And I think, babe, what I learned was that I actually might do some of these things.
I know. It's like I know that I definitely do some of these things as well, but I also kind of feel like it's only human. I feel like some of these things we do because of relationship and how close we are. Like fixing feels like, I'm trying to fix the issue that you have an issue. You say you have a headache. Well, did you take ibuprofen? That seems like a reasonable.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is it reasonable? They have a headache now. How about asking if they're okay? You know what I'm saying? Instead of going internally and discussing what you think might be best, maybe just stay external and say, hey, well, how are you? Can I get you anything?
Yeah. I mean, and I think when you look at this article and you think about the examples, you really do need to try to stay open-ended, right? So
that's a big one.
Did you, instead of saying, well, did you take ibuprofen? Which I guess can be a communication block to someone. It can be like you said, how can I help?
Yeah, how can I help?
I
think because I know I've done so many of these. I'm like, how could this be bad? But I think what the article is really trying to teach us is that these responses as initial responses to the person's inquiry. Let's say they're saying, man, I have a headache. The initial response like this can be blocking because it doesn't leave anywhere for them to go as the person trying to communicate. Really good observation,
something. Baby.
So it's not like the overall issue is like trying to fix somebody's issue is overall a problem. But the real issue becomes we're trying to fix the issue before we've even heard the person out.
Right. I love that. And I kind of also see them as possible blocks in communication.
Possible,
They're always.
It's a great way of thinking. Possible
blocks in communication, but they're possibilities. You have to be open to how you're responding to people when they're talking to you, or responding to your spouse when they're talking to you. Is kind of how I see it.
Right.
But what you said too, initial
it's
jumping right there before you've had a chance to listen.
To really absorb what they're actually trying to communicate,
I actually really like that. So we're going to talk about the last few that are on this list, and then kind of gain some perspective. But just reading this article and talking about it has helped me really take a look at how I communicate with you. And the things that we could say, but like we always say, the trust is there. Once the trust is there, sometimes a lot of these things have a bit of a cushion, and you don't necessarily see it as a block in communication. But if you're someone who's struggling with communication, or even struggling with connecting with your spouse, this is something to really keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So, all right, let's dive into the last few. So, our last one was preaching. The next one we're going to talk about is reassuring.
Reassuring.
This is when the listener assures the partner of the eventual outcome of the problem. The block is, it's probably nothing and will go soon. So that's like, okay, we're still using the example of the headache. It's like, oh, you'll be fine. Where you think you're like encouraging and supporting, it actually is a block in communication.
Yeah, I could totally see it as a block. Okay, I say to you, damn, babe, my head is really pounding. And you say,
oh, you'll be fine. It's nothing. I'm sure you just,
So there's nowhere else for me to go from there.
Right.
I either plead my case again with more urgency, or I just didn't get heard. And I got to tell you, like, definitely from a man's perspective, we're used to not getting heard, technically. So, we'll fall back with that type of stuff. You say that to a guy, and he's more likely to go, yeah, it's probably nothing. When in fact, most wives will tell you that, no, when he says it's nothing, it's, especially for himself, it's probably a whole lot of something. Because we don't like the doctor at all. So anything having to relate to go to the doctor or any kind of thing like that is not something we're going to be into. So
that's interesting.
Is it?
Yeah. Okay. I actually, it makes sense though, coming from knowing the mind of the man.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
Interesting.
Right. So
I think I might have experienced this with you.
Okay.
I feel like sometimes, because, as you guys have seen in my previous podcast, I've dealt with a lot of anxiety. And so sometimes I may say something to him and he's like, I don't think he'll jump right here, but he'll be like, oh, it's probably, or say like, I have a headache, like that I've had for like 3 days straight. I'll be like, babe, I got a headache. It won't go away. I'll use the example. Hey, I'll use the example of the headache here that they're using. It won't go away, and he'll listen and he'll talk, but then he'll say, it's probably just allergies. I think you'll be, I think it'll be fine, but we can monitor, right? And I don't ever see it as a block in communication, but when he's saying it, but when I'm reading this article, I do feel like you're downplaying it.
I could see how that happens. I think I even mentioned this in the last podcast. At least for me, my intention isn't to downplay. Mm-hmm. It's just to start at step one. Because unless we start at step one, we can't eliminate it down the line. So then we get down the line and we'll go, well, what about this? We didn't do this. And then we have to kind of stop and double back to kind of do the thing that we could have done early on to realize. And you're right, because you deal with anxiety, what I find myself doing is not necessarily, like I said, not, at least to my way of thinking, not downplaying it, but saying, all right, let's just be systematic about how we're going to go through this process. Because a lot of the time with anxiety, the first thing to go is the rational thought. And the problem is, if we're going to get to an answer, we got to start with the rational thought. We got to have a place to start from. So if we start at, okay, you have a headache, how's your water intake? That sounds like it makes sense to me. Because I know for you, once the water is not where it should be, headaches are going to come. So I just like to start at step 1. But if we get through step 1 through 10 and we're like, okay, it's not any of that. You probably, is your experience of me that I don't follow through with the others?
No. I don't feel that. I think I see you as more trying to ground us, or ground the situation in a place of, okay, let's not panic kind of thing. But let's really try to think about, because I'm not thinking clearly per se. So you're like, well, let me try to, you know, I can see that what you're saying. Try to take it step by step.
Right.
And to your point of, when you do have anxiety, you don't think rationally. But I'm never going to learn how to do that if you jump in every time to try to, you sometimes, like I always tell you, I have to work through the emotions first.
Right.
So that I can get to the place where I'm
that.
thinking rationally.
Yeah,
because
I dig
sometimes
that.
I just don't
dig
think
that.
rationally. And you're absolutely right. I'm not negating that point. But I do notice that when something is wrong, I tend to be a little hesitant about how I present the information if I'm not feeling well or if something's happening. Because especially when I was going through my whole anxiety attack, oh my gosh, I would sit there and be like, who am I going to talk to about this? Because my friends knew, he knew, pretty much everyone knew at a certain point. But when you're in a place where it's like, okay, I'm not better. Like, I know I'm smiling today and we just had fun this weekend, or, but I'm inside not better. How do I keep saying, hey, look, I'm not better? There's a lot of hesitant moments because you don't want to feel shut down. And part of that is your ability to receive the information that someone's giving you, especially your spouse, but also the blocks in communication where people feel like, hey, I'm trying to be helpful, but I'm actually causing this block in communication.
Yeah, because like for me, going through your time when you were going through anxiety really tough, there was a long time in there that you kind of just denied that it was anxiety.
Long time.
It was just a denial. So in my mind, I'm like, do I fight you on that? Because I can see where people are saying anxiety.
Yeah, everybody saw
But the thing is, I also can't be the one perpetuating that thought because that, to me, feels like downplaying. Yeah, but it's anxiety, so yeah. It's how it sounds in my head. So instead, I thought, okay, well, let's explore all of the options because I don't know. I'm not in your body to know what you feel. I'm not going to hesitate to guess. But what I can do is listen to what you're saying and go through the steps, however long that takes. But I find it difficult sometimes to know that that's the issue, but to not try to fix.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And I understand that about you.
Because
I understand that.
Especially if I can recognize that's the issue right there.
Right.
It's hard not to be a dog hunting for a bone, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And seeing it and going, squirrel! I get it, but it isn't necessarily the most conducive to a conversation. It's a block.
Right.
It's a block for sure.
Right.
If it's not implemented properly.
I think the more vulnerable you are is the more that these things really come forward at you. Because I never really feel like, oh, gosh, you're not hearing me. You're just not listening. I never feel that way, per se. But when I'm in my most vulnerable places, I don't know what if I say, okay, babe, this is really a block in communication. Then the next question would be like, well, what would you want him to say to you? Do you see what I'm saying? What would...
There it is.
That's the hard part because he could just say, okay, baby, it'll be all right. But that could be a block in communication depending on who you are. Or he can just not say anything. But that could feel like, okay, you're just shutting down. You're not even acknowledging me, So this is why it's really, really hard. And it's really important to recognize where you are. Because when I'm anxious, I'm very, very vulnerable. So he could say anything and it could really feel, it could feel like a true block in communication.
That's fair. I can totally see that.
So it's really hard. You have to. This is why this is such this is the work, I guess, that we always talk about.
This is the work. That's good.
This is the work because
right
I have to trust him not to. I have to trust that he's really trying to help me because I believe that he is. But he also has to trust that, look, it may not feel good if you say this at this moment, but that doesn't mean that, you're a horrible person. It just means that right now, that is not what I need.
Yeah.
And I also have to communicate that. He also has to be able to receive that without feeling like...
That's big.
Not feeling like, oh my gosh, nothing I say is going to help. Like, you have to really... This is the work, y'all.
You really don't want your man to feel like there's nothing I can do to help. Because you know what we do? Okay.
Stonewall.
Well, it's not Stonewall. We treat you like we treat ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If my boy was like, yo, you good? And he was like, yeah, I'm good. For real, you good? We can rap about it. Let's talk. Nah, man, I'm good. All right. I might revisit it later. Might. But he said he's good. So until he tells me different, I'm not gonna push the issue.
I understand, yes.
So at a certain, we know we're not supposed to treat women this. We know we're not supposed to treat women this way. It's not the same thing always. A friendship is one thing, but definitely not in a relationship. The point though is, after a certain point, that's all we got.
Yeah.
If everything we're gonna say is gonna be offensive, and if we say nothing, we're stonewalling, then the best thing we got after that is to treat you like we treat ourselves.
And I can respect that as long as I can then come to you and say, hey, I felt like everything that you said to me was offensive. And here's why I felt this way. And you can accept that even though you weren't trying to be offensive, it was offensive in the moment because of ... Do you see what I'm saying? This is where you have to be open to hearing that, okay, I'm going to be how I am, or I'm going to say what I want, but you need to be the one to be able to communicate that respectfully. Look, I wasn't feeling that. This is why I wasn't feeling that. And you on the other side, hearing that, need to say, okay, I can understand where you're coming from. Here's my thought behind it. Even if it's not in the moment, right? But here's my thought process behind this. Because I understand him as a man when he says everything he just said. But that doesn't mean that it ends there, right? This is the work where we both are talking, where we're both working through, where we're both expressing and assessing where we are so that we can talk to each other about what it is that we're feeling.
Yeah, I fully agree. I feel like the best I can do as a man is just lay my cards on the table as bare as I can make them. To consider as much as I can your perspective, and to move about the cabin in our relationship that gives us both as much leeway and wiggle room as we can muster.
Yeah. Because
after that, we're talking about conflict resolution.
Right.
And I'm going to come at conflict resolution differently.
Right.
My mindset around it's going to change because afterwards, after the resolution part of the conflict resolution, something is going to be abridged, changed, edited, either in your mind or both of our behavior.
Right.
So it's important. Like, I'm going to want to notate that. I'm going to want to put that into my being so I can move about the cabinet,
absolutely,
effectively.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. We took a long time on that one, but it's because we could relate. So we're going to go on to the next one, and that is diagnosing, right? Putting a label on the problem is like putting the bow on the gift. It finalizes the problem and does not leave much room for exploration. Example, you're dehydrated and stressed.
So that's what it is. No other edits. Could be anything else. This is what it is, and done.
Right. And it says here, the fact that they were right was actually more annoying than if they were wrong. It didn't help me to hear it in that way, and didn't help me to feel like what I was talking about was interesting or valid. That's the experience of the person who is
And see, this is the part where, like, and there's for me as the husband, right? There's a difference between fixing and diagnosing. Fixing feels more like I'm just gonna guess at something until I feel like I got it right.
Right.
Diagnosing is I know I got it right, and now we should change these things. There's two different thought processes there.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I don't know for me if this would be a communication block personally. Maybe it's my medical background where we're always diagnosing somebody with something, right? Our goal in the medical field as a nurse is to figure out what's wrong.
Right.
Right? Because people want to know what's wrong.
People want to know what's wrong.
So you're like, you have to do all these tests and say, okay, this is the diagnosis. And so I don't necessarily see this one so much as a communication block for me personally. I'm not denying that it may be in general, just for me, because he would say, okay, you seem stressed, baby, maybe you're a little dehydrated, and go bring me some water and rub my feet. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So that's great for me, but for someone else, especially when you're not, like, if I know I'm not working out or not eating well, and then now your spouse comes in and like, yeah, well, maybe it's that Big Mac you had yesterday. It's like, you're right, but
thanks.
I don't really feel like hearing that, and I think
appreciate it.
And, like, I know this, but I'm in a mood. I just want to eat a Big Mac, like, leave me alone, kind of thing. But no, for me, this one actually may not be as big of a communication block as like the last one was. But again,
I gotta say, like, some of these, just because I'm gonna say this, right? Sometimes as a husband, you've got to, and I'm sure sometimes as a wife too, but sometimes as a husband, you got to just be like, look, there's the issue. We can do everything else about it after. However, we're all going to collectively acknowledge that right there, that thing, that block is the issue. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sorry to have to be the one to deliver this news, but I'm about to, because somebody's got to say it.
Yeah.
Like, we can't just, because it's impolite or...
Right.
Nah. Sometimes you got to be the one to go, that's the problem. Now, we can all decide to address it when we decide to address it. That's fine. However, that's the problem right there.
Right. I agree. You do have to, especially if you're working toward a goal. Hey, that's the problem, but let me help you fix it. Or and again, this could be the fixing block communication, but again, you have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
Let's do this together. And that's why we always say we're better together, because it's more than just saying you. It's really, let's do this together. How can we make this, how can we help you through this? How can we make it work? So, okay. Let's talk about the last one really quick. This is grilling. The listener attempts to fix the problem with a series of questions aimed to get more information from the talker. This might be me. Okay, the block. How much water did you drink? Did you eat enough breakfast? The experience is, this felt like a quick fire round in a game show. It was horrible. I got flustered and couldn't think fast enough. Totally threw me off what I was trying to convey. This, I feel like, honestly, y'all, I feel like I'm a bit guilty of this, because I'm an inquirer. I love to ask questions, because I do feel like questions, well, maybe not, but I always felt like questions kind of leaves the person open to answer. So instead of saying, how was your day? How are you feeling? I ask him all the time, hey, how much water did you drink today?
Yeah, true.
I didn't do really well with water. Or, how was the diet today? Or, things like that, just kind of leaving it open for discussion. But what they're saying here is that it actually could be a block, because if you're asking question after question after question, which I definitely do, that could, the person feels kind of backed in a corner, I guess is what they're trying to
There's a
say.
difference between having a conversation with somebody you don't know, so you kind of ask a question back and forth and get intrigued, and an interrogation.
Right.
Where there's a light on you, like, where were you on the night of January? Like, those two experiences are very different.
You don't have to tell them about my light, though, babe.
I mean,
that was supposed to be our thing.
I mean, you put on a red light. That could be our thing. Hey.
No, I don't have a light, y'all. But no, you're right.
Now, Amazon.com. All right. Don't listen.
You're right. The interrogation. No, that's.
I don't feel interrogated by you. Okay. And I think, honestly, I don't have the experience of you that you're nervous about. Necessarily.
Well, that's good.
I don't.
Okay.
However.
When me and my mom get together.
Oh, boy!
Go ahead, say it. I already know it's coming. I already know.
It's just rapid fire. Boom, 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 boom.
A lot of questions, y'all.
It's a lot of questions. So, I ain't mad. I'm really not mad. But, can you answer them all? No. No, you can't. But they legitimately are trying to help. And I feel like undergirding all of this is, if you have a decent amount of actual trust in the person you're dealing with, that a lot of these could be blocks or invitations to understand the person just a little bit better.
Oh, yes, baby. I love that.
So I feel like blocks, and this has been, for the last podcast and this one, it's just been bothering me, because I'm like, I don't understand how we can just call these blocks and leave it there, because I don't see them all as blocks. If you started inquiring and rapid fire questioning me, I have two options. I can be offended at the fact that you're rapid fire questioning me, which certainly I am sometimes. Sometimes, like, don't question me. I'm an adult. Hello? And sometimes it's like, something's up. She's concerned about something. What is she concerned about? Let me just tune in to what she's concerned about.
The grass.
I'm sorry.
we'll tell y'all about that.
That's a hilarious story.
There was a lot of questions about the grass.
There was a lot of questions about the grass.
But
did they listen?
Right.
No, not at all.
You're right, babe. Looking at the other side of that, that's learning more about your spouse is really. I love that.
Yeah, one thing I learned about you, especially when you're feeling high anxiety, well, not so much these days, but previously, you would clean like a madwoman. And I always felt pressure to join in, like somehow this was going to be. It never was. It always felt awkward. But I realize now that when you clean like that, what you're doing is burning excess energy. So it allowed me to free myself of having to join in, but it also allowed me to be tuned in with you. So as I'm starting to see it happen, and I'm going, oh boy, what happened? Sometimes I'll come up from the studio, I'm like, this place is spotless. Oh boy, what happened? Oh boy, let me go upstairs and check on my wife. I just want to make sure that especially with all the issues around couples that we can have, we can do this one, guys. If you can recognize some of these things as a way to tune into your partner and not just tune into your own emotions about the situation, I promise you can find something truly, truly special, something different that can really affect changing your relationship.
And also, really, it helps you know where you are. Yeah. Because, all of these may not affect you. And again, you can use them as, like he said, that you can use them as ways to learn and be in tune with your partner. But I know for me, reassuring really has been a communication block for me. It's important for me to really look inside and be like, I kind of feel a way. when he may say this, or it makes me question or look at things a little differently. So it's important for me to know that and then to communicate that as well. So use these as tools to guide you, not just, okay, we got all these blocks, I can't say anything, right?
Yeah.
Just use them as tools to help guide your relationship and learn more about yourself and your partner, as he said. So, yeah. This was great, babe.
This was fun.
All right, y'all. We're going to end it here. Please check us out. Follow us. Subscribe.
Please.
All the things.
Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Ring the bell so that you can always get notified of our new and upcoming videos and our products and everything that we're going to release. We have our new book, The 10 Commandments to Great Communication and Relationships, coming out super soon. We'd love for you guys to check it out when that time comes. Date will be dropping on this podcast. Check it out.
All right, guys. Remember, we're better together.
Better together.
Talk to you soon.